So welcome everyone. My name is Alexa Gasky. I'm an assistant director of admission here at GU and one of your hosts for this evening. You may have noticed that, as I mentioned before, we are recording this webinar. So those that are unable to view it can absolutely participate, as well as for you all to be able to view again. It's going to be posted on our YouTube channel and our Gonzaga website, which we'll put a link to later on. We definitely want to answer your questions though. So throughout the presentation, please type your questions in the Q&A function, and we have some colleagues here that are going to be able to answer them. I want to stress the fact we are not going to answer questions through the chat and just through the Q&A function. We're going to do our best to answer as many questions as we're able to during this evening, but I also want to remind you to not disclose any personal information in the Q&A or the chat, because everyone will be able to see that. Please contact our financial aid office, and again, we'll put their contact info in the chat later on for those specific questions. We do also have some poll questions throughout the presentation, so please feel free to stay interactive. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to some of our colleagues who are here today to help present and answer your questions. So we'll start with Sarah.
Thanks, Alexa. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I work in student financial services, which at Gonzaga, that means student account, student employment, and the financial aid office. We are so glad that you are joining us today. So our job in financial aid and in student financial services more broadly is to help students and families have access to the financial resources that they need, whether that be financial aid opportunities or employment opportunities. And we also help with the billing and payment as well. So I'm going to ask my colleague Kelly to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Winston, Director of Financial Aid, and I'm here to support you in your Q&A today.
Hi everyone, my name's Will Shoup. I'm an admission counselor here in our Office of Admission, and I'm going to be helping out with the Q&A and running the polls today. So look forward to seeing all your answers in there.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. And again, we hope that this is informative for you. So please feel free to leverage that Q&A feature. And we'll do our best to get through all the questions. So before we dive into the financial aid details, though, I just want to take a moment and highlight our mission and approach to assisting students and families with the process. So like everyone who works at Gonzaga, we're really committed to Gonzaga's mission. And we hope that you see that both through our service and also our policies on how we go about awarding aid. So we see our role not only to assist families with resources for paying for school or attending Gonzaga, but also to educate and kind of develop students through our work. The other thing I just want to call out here is that finances are super personal. We get that. I've been doing this work for a long time, and so has Kelly. And we really understand how hard it is sometimes to ask questions around money or to share financial hardship with us. So if you don't get your questions answered today, or if other questions come up throughout the process, don't hesitate to contact our office. We really take a team approach to serving students. For the most part, we are incredibly responsive, usually within a day of receiving an email or a phone call. It has been a bit of a FAFSA season this year. So if we're not quite on the super quick responses for the next few weeks, please be patient with us, but I don't expect that it would take longer than a day or so. And to get us started talking about the financial aid process, we're going to go ahead and do our first poll, which is how many of you have received or accessed your financial aid offer from Gonzaga? Awesome. I see some responses coming in. I'm going to give it just another moment or so. So awesome. It looks like many of you have received financial aid offers, 91%. We have a few that haven't and some others. We probably should have added, I received an estimated financial aid offer to that. It's just because it's been a little bit of a weird year, but I imagine that's what some of the others are falling into as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide and talk a little bit about where we're at on the timeline. So first of all, don't fret if you haven't received your aid offer. As of Friday, April 25th, we physically mailed out most financial aid offers for first-year students who've been accepted to Gonzaga and have a completed FAFSA. We've been getting completed FAFSAs every day, and our plan is 2 times a week to be sending out updated financial aid offers. So if you were just recently able to complete your FAFSA, you should expect an aid offer soon. If you feel like you completed your FAFSA a little while ago, or maybe you need some help completing an incomplete FAFSA, that would be a great reason to reach out to us. So we, as I mentioned, we physically mail out financial aid offers. Students also receive an email from us when their information is available in ZagWeb, which is a student portal that you'll use as a student at GU. And we are getting aid offers out as we can, usually a couple times a week. But if it's something you're really anxious for and you haven't checked in with us, I invite you to do that. We are more than happy to let you know the status. Sometimes we have a hard time matching up records, FAFSA records with admissions records. So it really helps us when you kind of reach out and check in if you're expecting an aid offer and you haven't. So where we're at in the process, you can see on the graphic up here, we're at step number 4. So you've been prepared, you completed the WASFA or the FAFSA form. Congratulations, by the way, that took a special feat this year in particular. You've been accepted. That's another congratulations. You've received your financial aid offer, and really the next steps are confirming that this is the right fit, including financial fit, and then to let us know that you want to be a ZAG. And as a reminder, the confirmation deadline, there's actually, we have it mistyped on the slide there. The confirmation deadline this year is June 1st.
Awesome. And I think we have our next poll. So let me get that up. There we go. So true or false question, only one FAFSA application is submitted during your college education. Okay, give it a couple more minutes or seconds really to get more folks to answer. Awesome. So most of you are correct. That is false. The FAFSA does need to be completed every year that you would like to be eligible for some financial aid. Of course, we do have our Gonzaga guarantee, which we will kind of go into a little bit later in the presentation. But as any international students that may be joining or viewing this recording, the primary source of funding will be academic merit scholarships for you. We encourage all students to apply for outside scholarships, and a great place to start would be to contact your local Education USA representative. The Global Diversity Scholarship is specifically for international students and is awarded automatically if you are eligible. And another way that international students can help with costs is through institutional on-campus jobs. And again, we're going to touch more on student employment later on in this presentation, and we have a student employment webinar coming up in a couple of weeks that we'll share out. Most of the material that we're going to cover today is geared towards students who are eligible to complete the FAFSA, but we wanted to take a moment to highlight the financial aid programs available to undocumented students. So all students, regardless of citizenship status, have their application automatically reviewed by the Office of Admission to determine eligibility for merit-based scholarships. You can also seek scholarships outside of schools. Gonzaga does have an outside scholarship database, which we can put in the chat. Washington residents can also submit the WASFA, or the Washington Application for State Financial Aid, which we encourage you to do as soon as possible if you haven't already. And as a result of the Washington Real Hope Act becoming law, applications for state need grants are now being accepted. Again, the WASFA is specifically for low-income non-citizen students that attend a Washington high school who are unable to file a free application for federal student aid due to immigration status. Any non-Washington residents can fill out and submit our needs analysis form to apply for need-based aid. Ready, Set, Grad is a great resource for scholarships and financial aid. We do also accept the College Bound Scholarship, and you should definitely check out washboard.org for scholarships for Washington residents. And for more information on financial aid and scholarships, you can contact Sharon Griffith, and their contact information is on this slide.
Thanks, Alexa. So with that, we just want to spend a minute letting you know a little bit about our systems, because there's a few of them, and this might be your first time accessing them for some of you. So First, you're going to want to set up your ZegMail account to access all of Gonzaga's system. Your ZegMail username and password are your single sign-on credentials for logging into all kinds of Gonzaga systems when you're a student, like on-campus Wi-Fi, ZegWeb, which is the student portal that I referred to a couple of times, Canvas, which is our online classroom portal. And like ZegWeb, some of these systems like ZegWeb, you're going to use right away, and others you might not use them until you get to campus. But the ZegMail account, that's also your email account as well. And you can find instructions on how to update ZegMail and get that all set up in your application portal, which is at apply.gonzaga.edu/status. That's where you would check for, that's where you got your acceptance information. That's the portal you use to apply. So in there, there's instructions on how to set up your ZegMail account. So after you set up your ZegMail account, you can access ZegWeb. And again, ZegWeb is Gonzaga's online portal for students to manage many administrative tasks, such as registering for classes and managing financial aid. You'll also use ZegWeb to submit a timesheet if you are a student employee. So again, it bears repeating, the ZegWeb is not the same as your application portal. This is a different portal than you use to access your admission information. And your login to ZegWeb will be your ZegMail email address and password. Once you're logged into ZegWeb, you'll see tiles. Don't be alarmed if your ZegWeb doesn't look exactly like what you see on the screen here, but you should have a tile called Financial Aid. And to access your financial aid, you're going to go ahead and click on that tab. Once you're in the financial aid section of the portal, you'll have a series of tabs across the top. The landing page is the home tab, and that's going to display important messages or requirements for financial aid. In some very few cases, we may need some more information to complete your financial aid, and you would find that under that home tab under student requirements. Your financial aid offer is located on the next tab called labeled award offer. And we've created a helpful video to help you navigate ZegWeb. This goes into a little bit more depth and has a video that kind of walks you through some of the more specific steps about how to accept or decline a loan and kind of the different tabs in ZegWeb in the financial aid section. One thing that is probably worth noting is that a lot of the terminology in ZegWeb has not been updated with the new FAFSA. So you might see some older terminology like expected family contribution. Just know that you're in the right spot and the information is accurate, even if some of the labels are from a bygone era of financial aid. So as I mentioned, we also mail out paper financial aid letters to first-year students. And a sample of what one looks like is on the screen here. You'll see we have Spike's financial aid offer, and we're going to use this example to talk about the different categories of financial aid available to students. So at this point in the process, you've likely heard different ways to describe types of financial aid. And one important distinction is whether the aid you're receiving is gift aid or self-help aid. And gift aid, as you can see here, is just as it sounds. It's really money that doesn't need to be repaid, and it's based on financial need or merit, sometimes a combination of the two. So usually financial aid labeled grants are based on financial need, and merit type aid is usually called scholarships, but those aren't hard and fast rules. Some scholarships are both need and merit based. We have hundreds of grants and scholarships with different names and eligibility requirements. Some students are going to qualify for federal grants like the federal Pell Grant or the federal SCOG grant, and Washington residents attending colleges in Washington state may also qualify for the Washington College Grant Program or College Bound. But as you look at the paper version of the financial aid offer, you'll see that it's all grouped together and subtotaled. So you'll see that gift aid section there. And it's important to note that some grants are based on information submitted on your FAFSA, and changes to your FAFSA may result in a change of your eligibility. All the aid that we've offered from Gonzaga will have a star next to it. And if we've offered aid from Gonzaga, just with all the issues with the FAFSA, know that we are not going to reduce that aid, even if something changes with your FAFSA application. If we do have to update your eligibility for federal or state aid, we're going to let the student know via email. And if you have questions or you're concerned about eligibility based on what you received, you can absolutely get in touch with us and we will confirm everything we can. But for the most part, we're feeling very confident in the 8 offers that we send out based on the FAFSA data that we have, and don't expect those to change a ton. So I think we have our next poll question, which is another kind of check-in quiz, and it's a true or false. Grants always have to be repaid. So it looks like we have a good number of people participating, and it looks like we have a super attentive and smart group that knows that grants do not need to be repaid. Grant money is gift aid that does not have to be.
Awesome. So of course, Gonzaga has many grants and scholarships as well. The criteria for these vary and nearly all are included with your financial aid offer. As you compare aid offers from different schools, it's important to keep renewability criteria in mind. At Gonzaga, most Gonzaga-based aid is guaranteed for 4 years or until you graduate through the Gonzaga Guarantee. The renewability criteria is a 2.0 GPA. The goal is to keep financial aid predictable year over year, at least in the areas we have control over. Federal and state aid is not guaranteed because we're at the mercy of politics and funding from the government, but in our experience, it too remains stable for most families. As a Jesuit school, Gonzaga emphasizes the idea of Magis into our university philosophy. Magis refers to the philosophy of doing more for others. With all the forms of financial aid that we have covered today, we work our hardest with families to make Gonzaga a possibility. One more step that we have taken is our Gonzaga Access Pledge, which is formerly known as the Magis Commitment. The Gonzaga Access Pledge allows Gonzaga to award Pell Grant eligible Washington State residents that apply as a first-year student to have their tuition covered from a combination of federal, state, and institutional financial aid resources. If you have a Gonzaga Access Pledge grant on your financial aid offer, then you are eligible for this program.
Awesome, thanks, Alexa. So we're going to talk about self-help aid next, and this is also just as it sounds. It's types of financial aid that have some obligation, such as loans that need to be repaid, or work study, which is an opportunity for students to earn money by working on or off campus. I know this next poll question is one of Kelly's favorite questions, which is, do you plan to work while you're in college? We're going to talk a little bit more about student employment next. So I think we have a poll question for that. Yep, there we go. Awesome, we're getting good response. Love to see that. Awesome. So it sounds like most everyone is either a yes or a maybe. And I bet if you attend the student employment webinar later this month, you will be convinced that working on campus is awesome. So work study is an opportunity to work while in college, and the jobs are designed for students with reasonable work hours. Most students work about 10 hours per week, so students can balance their work obligations with their academics and other interests as well. There's a lot of really great reasons to work in addition to earning money. If you're not from Washington, know that Washington has one of the highest, if not the highest, minimum wage in the country, and all of our student workers are paid at least that. So that can add up fairly quickly and make a good dent in having some cash resources for living expenses. It also is a great opportunity to do some career exploration, find out what you like and maybe don't like about jobs. And it's a great way to meet people and feel connected to the Gonzaga community. So if we move on, if you're eligible for need-based student employment, it would be included in your financial aid offer, like on the slide that we're going to look at next. Thanks, Alexa. Need-based employment includes both on and off campus work. Most of the jobs in work study, though, are on campus. But if you're not offered work study as part of your financial aid offer, there's still many opportunities to work on campus. Each year we have about 1,500 students, 1,600 students, I think, working on campus, most in non-need-based work opportunities. I think only about a third qualify for need-based work opportunities. So again, if working on campus is something that's really important to you and you weren't awarded work study, there will still be many opportunities. The Student Employment Office will start communicating with students over the summer, and job searches begin in early August. It's certainly possible to search for jobs before you arrive on campus, but it's absolutely not required. There are still many opportunities to search for jobs throughout the term. Really, for the last few years, especially, we've had more jobs than students to fill them. So it is not at all required that you get a super early jump start. But if it's, again, if it's something that's important to you, or you have a specific location you'd like to work, you might have the opportunity to secure that job before you arrive on campus in the fall. So we have our awesome student employment colleagues who are going to do a webinar that's going to go into best practices for how to search for a job, the types of jobs that might be available, to get you prepared for thinking about working at GU. And that will be on May 21st at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And you'll go to the same place you went to register for this webinar to register for that one. So let's talk about loans. Students who have financial need are going to be eligible to borrow in the direct subsidized loan program. And this is a loan that doesn't earn interest while you're in school. The direct unsubsidized loan program does not require financial need, and students eligible for financial aid can borrow in this program. The direct loan has annual limits, and if borrowing from those programs isn't enough, parents can borrow a Parent Plus loan from the federal loan program, or the student can borrow from a financial institution like a bank or a credit union. First-year students who are eligible to submit a FAFSA application are going to be eligible for a total of $5,500 in federal loan eligibility. And that limit is for nearly all, but not quite all students. And this would be included in your financial aid offer. If you qualify for need-based aid, a portion of this loan could be subsidized. If you don't qualify for need-based aid, it would just be summed together as an unsubsidized loan for $5,500. The students who might qualify for a little bit more would be students that are have several credits, like over a year's worth of credits. Maybe they did a Running Start or college in the high school, or students who are independent and aren't required to provide parent information on the FAFSA. That amount might be higher. No, though, for second-year students, the amount goes from $5,500 to $6,500. So it's not as if it's like this massive increase in eligibility if you going from first year to second year. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So another important term that you've likely heard and should absolutely be considering in this sort of decision on where to attend school is the cost of attendance. And the cost of attendance is a term that is required. Schools are sort of required to create estimated costs for all the costs that a student might incur while they're studying at Gonzaga. These figures are based on averages or weighted calculations, so they may not match exactly what you're going to be charged. It's important to know that the cost of attendance is going to include items like personal expenses and transportation expenses, and these are items that Gonzaga will not charge you for individually. Rather, they're an estimate of what a student might spend on personal items like shampoo or entertainment or clothing, and transportation to and from campus, whether that's flights or driving to and from campus on a daily basis if the student is local. In our work, we found that most families are really interested in the direct costs, which is represented on the right-hand side there. The direct costs are what will appear on a student's bill, so tuition, fees, and for students living on campus, it would be on-campus room and a meal plan. So let's talk a little bit about the billing process. Our colleagues in the student accounts office are responsible for preparing and distributing billing statements for tuition fees, room, and other related fees. This is also the office that processes payments, sets up payment plans, disperses financial aid, and issues refunds to students. So pro tip here, effective communication with our student accounts colleagues, who are wonderful, by the way, is a really important part of the Gonzaga experience. Our colleagues in student accounts are so kind and super flexible. And so we always appreciate knowing kind of when families are working on payment arrangements or something came up. That's just really helpful for us to know. So there are many different payment options, and family can use one or a combination of options to pay the bill. So at Gonzaga, we're going to bill by semester. So in July 2024, enrolled students are going to receive a statement that outlines the charges for the upcoming semester. The first due date is going to be early to mid-August, usually around August 10th, which I believe is a Saturday this year. So it might be August 9th or maybe August 12th, but we will share that with you when we have it. And there will be an option for a no fee deferment until the first week of school. So when you get your bill, if maybe you're waiting on a transfer from a 529 plan or still just need a little bit longer to figure out kind of how to make things work, know that you'll have the option to select a no fee deferment that essentially just extends the deadline. It just lets us know that, like, hey, yes, I'm still planning on coming and I'm working on it. At the time you receive your July bill, you can also sign up for a monthly payment plan, and that's going to divide the charges up into 4 months. Those months being August, September, October, and November. Another payment option is a Parent Plus loan. So parents of dependent students can apply for a federal Parent Plus loan. The application, I believe, is now available. I think it was supposed to launch last week, and I bet by the end of the webinar, we can confirm whether or not it's live. The Parent Plus loan works slightly different than traditional consumer loans. It does require a credit check, but it is based on the absence of negative credit as opposed to your credit score. So no minimum credit score is needed to get a plus loan. And it's sort of a yes or no approval. So you're either approved or you're not. It's not as if you're approved for a certain amount. So the disqualifying, so a reason that someone might not qualify is adverse credit history in the last 90 days. And that could be something like negative line items on your credit report or payments that are 90 days late, tax liens, and more. Another option that students use is private or alternative loans. Those mean essentially the same thing. We use the term private and alternative loans interchangeably. These are more like your traditional consumer loans. Info is available at gonzaga.edu/loans. There is a historical list of lenders that Gonzaga students have used over the years. There, our kind of recommendation is that you first check in with all of the financial institutions that you have a relationship with to see if they have student loans to kind of compare as well. For families that have a 529 plan in Washington, if you have GET credits or some other Coverdell education program or a college savings program, Gonzaga does accept that as payment. And to transfer the funds, you would sign into your account and you'll be guided through the process. We ask that you include the student's full name on the request. So you're going to log into whatever portal you have for that institution, for that account. You would ask money to be transferred to Gonzaga, and please ask them just to include the student's name and Gonzaga ID number if you have it, as that will help us get it connected to the right account. Dream Ahead is another college saving program. Again, we're talking mostly to Washington residents here. And the same rules apply. Log into the portal, make the request, and just be sure to put the student's name and Gonzaga ID. Again, if you have it, that's just really helpful information for us to get payment applied to the right account.
There are a couple of other financial aid opportunities that we want to cover. So outside scholarships are scholarships from sources other than Gonzaga, and there are many different resources, but these are scholarships that students pursue outside of the traditional financial aid process. Each year, Gonzaga students bring in between $2 and $3 million in outside scholarships, and the best place to look for outside scholarships is in your own community. If a student receives outside scholarships, it's usually from an organization they already have a relationship with. Community groups, for example, booster clubs, Rotary clubs are also a frequent source. Service organizations that you or your student may have been involved with, like Campfire or Girl Scouts, or other great resources. And sometimes parent employers or the student's employer and community foundations are all other places that you can look at for opportunities. There are a few other resources we have to share for looking for scholarships for Washington residents. You can search for scholarships at washboard.org. This is a curated list of scholarships maintained by the Washington Student Achievement Council, and most scholarships will be directed towards Washington residents attending schools in Washington. Gonzaga also maintains a scholarship search engine, and we'll share that link in the chat, and you're welcome to check that for scholarship opportunities as well. Very frequently, outside scholarships can affect a student's financial aid. As aid administrators, we're required to coordinate all the financial aid a student receives. So we ask that students report outside scholarships on ZagWeb, which is the portal that we just went into. But rest assured that if necessary to adjust your aid due to an outside scholarship, that we will do so in the order that is most beneficial to the student. For example, loans first. We also want to point out that Gonzaga has a family discount program. So Gonzaga University provides a family discount when there are multiple siblings simultaneously enrolled as full-time matriculated undergraduates. This discount is 10% off of the older sibling and receives a 10% reduction of tuition. We do ask that families notify us via email or by using a simple tool so that we can keep track of the siblings. Again, we'll share that family discount tool in the chat. For students who are military connected, whether you are a student veteran or the dependent of a service member, use of military education benefits is an available option at Gonzaga. We've highlighted here just a few of the available programs utilized by enrolling students. These include the Post 9/11 GI Bill and associated Yellow Ribbon Program, the Montgomery GI Bill, Chapter 35 for survivors and dependents, as well as vocational rehabilitation benefits. It's important to note that there is a process for transferring service member benefits to a dependent through the Department of Defense, and dependents in return, you must apply to the VA to transfer that entitlement to the university. Families as well as student veterans are encouraged to build a timeline to complete these tasks and are welcome to contact Gonzaga's VA benefits team, whose information is on this slide, for additional advising and assistance navigating the process. Once a student has confirmed enrollment to the university and registered for classes, benefits will be certified each semester.
Thanks, Alexa. So just a couple more slides and then we'll open it up for some really great questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A. So first, know that the FAFSA is going to be based on your 2022 income. And we know that a lot of families' income may have changed since then. And while prior year income is adequate for some families, we just know that that's not the case for many families, especially as we kind of work through the tail end, I think, of impacts of the pandemic, but we're also coming off of really high inflation and just a weird year with the FAFSA as well. So financial aid regulations allow us as financial aid administrators to use current or projected financial information to adjust your FAFSA and essentially help you and reevaluate your eligibility. So we have an appeal process and we will put the link in the chat as well. And essentially what we'd ask you to do is share, either the student or the parent, share a little bit about your financial circumstances. We know that a lot of families are under a time crunch, so I would encourage you to share whatever details you feel are pertinent, and the more details you can share, really the quicker we can probably move through kind of getting you an answer and getting you a response to that appeal. There are a lot of things we can take into consideration and some things that we can't. Most of the circumstances are outlined on the financial aid appeals page, but the most common things that we're able to take into consideration are a loss of wages or benefit for the parent, the student's parent, or their spouse. Having multiple children enrolled in college at the same time. Previously in our old version of the FAFSA, that was something that was taken into consideration, and it's no longer taken into consideration. Divorce or separation. So if you filed your taxes jointly and are no longer with that partner, that's something we can take into consideration. Significant medical bills, loss of child support. If you have younger students that families paying K-12 private school tuition for, that's something we could take into consideration, and support paid to extended family members to support their basic needs. So we will get the appeal link in the chat there, or you can reach out to us to let us know. So Gonzaga Education is an investment, but we really strongly believe in what we do and the value Gonzaga provides. So up on the slide, you can see all the different measures that we're really proud of. Gonzaga's indebtedness is well below the national average for four-year schools, and even more significantly below the average for other private four-year schools. All admitted students were mailed a brochure about the value of Gonzaga Education, and we're proud that Gonzaga has been considered a top value in higher education because of the quality of the academics, the cost of attendance, and the amount of financial aid that we offer. We have super impressive stats throughout the brochure to show how well we prepare students for the future. We have excellent marks in retention and graduation rates as well. So if you'd like to discuss specific academic programs, as well as kind of our holistic approach to education, don't hesitate to contact us. We're happy to help share what we know and what we really believe in at GU. We admitted you because we believe in you, and we hope that you will all be ZAGs.
Yes, so this concludes the presentation portion of tonight's webinar, and we really hope this information has helped to clarify the financial aid process, as well as give you a sense of what you and your family can prepare for financially. On this slide, you see the main phone numbers and email addresses for both the admission office and for financial aid. Please never hesitate to reach out to us. We are always here to talk through things or answer any questions that you have. And speaking of questions, we'll go ahead and start addressing some of those out loud. So again, please feel free to continue to use the Q&A as we go through the night. So the first question is, can you share more on the qualifications for the Gonzaga grant?
Sure. So the Gonzaga grant is our biggest need-based grant program. It is so need-based can mean a few different things, but at Gonzaga, we have many families qualifying for that grant that may not qualify for other need-based aid, either through the state or like for the federal Pell Grant. The amount, the ranges vary from about $1,500 on up, and it depends on a bunch of other different factors. So if there's a more specific question, or if someone's asking the question, might I be eligible for more of this Gonzaga grant? I think I would probably ask you to submit an appeal if you haven't already, or just reach out and ask our office, and we can go into a little bit more detail. It's just hard to talk specifics sort of in a more public place around that.
Thank you. What does accepting loans mean? Can a student accept it but not use it? And would it count against them if they use it, if they don't use it, but still accepted it on ZagWeb?
Loans are absolutely optional. So loans for first-year students, there's going to be 3 steps that you need to do to sort of essentially have a loan be applied to your student account. And we will follow up with next steps. But the first step is to accept the loan in ZagWeb. That just indicates to us that yes, you're interested in it. Students will then be asked to do a entrance counseling or an entrance interview. And this is just an exercise to kind of educate you on rights and responsibilities as a loan borrower. And then the final thing that you'll have to do is what's called a master promissory note. And that's essentially the legal document, sort of making sure that sort of lets you know, or sort of you are agreeing to repay the loan because it is money that has to be repaid. So if those 3 steps aren't complete, the loan won't be applied to your account. So accepting on ZagWeb when you're not sure is really no big deal. You are not required, again, to accept it. You're not required to go through all of those 3 steps. If you accept it and decide that you don't need it, just go ahead and let us know, so that we can update your financial aid record. If you accept the loan, it will show as it'll reduce your payment on your bill, so it'll show up as your bill as a type of financial aid that you intend to use. So that's why you should let us know if you really weren't planning to accept it. If you don't accept it and decide you need it later, that is fine. Just know those annual limits reset at the end of the school year. So you really have through the whole school year. Maybe you don't need it in the first semester, but need it in the second semester. That is absolutely doable. But it's not as if the loan amounts are cumulative. Once the school year is over, you will not have access to those funds.
Awesome. Do parents have an account to access and pay the bills, or does only students have access to do that?
Yeah, excellent question. And we should probably just get that in our presentation. So students can set up what's called authorized payers, mostly parents, but if there's someone else, maybe another family member or someone else who's helping the student navigate the payment process, they'll have the opportunity to do that really anytime, but that would be another great reason to get that ZegMail set up. And there's information about authorized payers on our website. And I'm sure if we're quick, we can pull that up and share the link in the chat.
Awesome. When do students need to accept their financial aid by?
We would ask that students make decisions on their financial aid by July 1st. Of course, the really important deadline here is our June 1st confirmation deadline, which lets us know that you want to attend Gonzaga. But whether or not you accept your financial aid, you'll have until about July 1st. After that, we're going to be preparing billing statements for students, and we would only include accepted aid on the billing statement. So of course, if you don't accept a loan, for instance, and would like to accept it later, you can do that. It just will make the billing process a little bit more confusing. So by July 1st is what I'd encourage you to do.
Is the Gonzaga ID number the number on the top right of the financial aid offer?
It sure is. And thank you for asking that question. But yes, it is the number on the financial aid offer. And I believe it's in posted in ZegWeb as well. But most students, I think, still memorize it. It's something that they'll need to recall for a few different things around campus when they get on campus.
Awesome. And there's a couple questions about unsubsidized versus subsidized loans. Can you go into the nuances between those two?
Yep, absolutely. So both the subsidized and unsubsidized loans are part of the federal direct loan program. So the money is lent by the U.S. Department of Education. Subsidized loans do not accrue interest while you're in school. So if you borrow $5,000 and the day after you graduate, you can pay that $5,000 off. It would not have accrued any interest. That is not true for unsubsidized loan programs. Those will accrue interest while you're in school, but you have the option to make interest-only payments while you're in school. They're not required, but of course, if you can swing it, it's a solid financial decision so that interest doesn't capitalize and accrue on itself. For all the federal direct loans, repayment begins 6 months after students leave or graduate. So you have some time to sort of secure a job, get on your feet a little bit, and then repayment would begin. And that there's a few different types of repayment. The standard repayment term is 10 years, but there is income-based repayment for, if you were in had a salary kind of just starting out, that might be something that a type of payment that you would enroll in, and there's other varieties as well. The in-school deferment, that term essentially means that you're not required to make payments while you're in school. That's true even if you go on to graduate school, medical school, law school after you graduate. So it's really any type of post-secondary enrollment, you would fall into that in-school deferment. So Alexa, do you think that covers it, or is there, did I miss
There is
anything?
one follow-up question. I think
Okay.
that does cover it for generally, but we've got a follow-up question that's saying, it looks like there's another step to accept the federal unsubsidized loan on the ZAG web page. What next step allows the students to accept it?
So that is a good question. It should be a lot, you should be able to accept it. it may be that we don't have your ZegWeb turned off. That might be a good reason just to get in touch with our office, and it would be as helpful for us as it probably would for you, just so we can make sure that things are turned on correctly, and ZegWeb is working as we expect it to.
Awesome. Pseudo tied to loans, but also tied to some other gift aid. If a student declines loans and gets outside scholarships, does that decrease or do they lose their Gonzaga grant?
Most likely not, like in nearly all cases not. In my close to 20 years of doing this, only 2 or 3 times have we ever had to reduce institutional aid. So the longer answer is there's a maximum amount of financial aid that a student can receive, and that amount is the cost of attendance. So if a student, receives a massive $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 outside scholarship, that's when we might have to reduce financial aid. But very rarely. We try to get creative. If a student has an outside scholarship that maybe we have to reduce some aid for, we might see if we can move some of those funds to a summer term if they're intending to enroll in the summer, or we might see if we can increase the cost of attendance if maybe they selected a higher meal plan than the average. So it's really, really uncommon that financial aid would be impacted, even if a student doesn't accept their loans.
Awesome. We've got a couple questions asking about the current interest rates on unsubsidized loans. I did a quick Google search, and it is currently 5.5 for undergraduate students. It is slightly higher for graduate studies. So hopefully that helps answer those questions. We have a question which may be better addressed by someone else, but I'm going to ask it out loud just in case. Gonzaga does not require students to get health insurance, but would you know how much it usually costs to have a student covered in Washington during the school year? So I'm going to lean on some of our Washington residents in the room.
I don't know the answer to that. But again, that is something that we could research for you or put you in touch with our colleagues who help connect students with health insurance options. But you are correct, because I just had to research this the other day, is that Gonzaga does not require proof of health insurance to attend GU.
Yeah, so there are some other offices on our campus that assist students in obtaining health coverage to make sure that they, get their needs met here in Washington State if they're coming in from out of state. So I would just encourage that student or anyone else that has concerns about this, just to reach out to your admission counselor directly, and then we can point you in the right direction and provide you with some additional resources that we're aware of, or at least point you in the right direction to which offices on campus assist students in that. So it looks like we so far have answered all of our questions in the Q&A. Some might, pop up. We did get one again towards health insurance and what is the cost of health insurance on campus. Gonzaga does not provide students with health insurance, so that's not anything that you would be billed for or would be included in fees. So again, if you have any questions about health insurance on campus or while your student is attending school in Washington, please feel free to reach out to your admission counselor directly. And again, in the chat, we'll be putting that link to find the contact info for your admission counselor. Or again, you can get connected with us at the emails or phone calls or the phone numbers on the slide there. But thank you so much. It looks like that's kind of slowed down our Q&A. Huge thanks to Sarah and Kelly in our financial aid office for joining us. Again, this webinar was recorded, and please reach out to both the financial aid office or the admissions office if you have any questions regarding Gonzaga or the financial aid process. Actually, if it's okay, because we've got 10 minutes left, we do have more questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and get to those. On the estimated direct costs from the student aid offer, it's $71,210, but from this webinar, it looks like that is the cost without transportation. So maybe I'll go back to the cost of attendance slide, and if you want to just walk through that again.
Actually, can you go to the aid offer, the one right before that? Because I think it's the same that has it broken down.
This one or?
One more back. Sorry, forward, stop. Nope, back one. So on the financial aid offer, the direct costs are 71,210. It's kind of small, but those are the costs at the top of both the estimated financial aid offer as well as the FAFSA-based financial aid offer. The net direct costs are that yellow or tannish shaded box, and that is the direct cost minus the gift aid. And then you can see the indirect costs down there, which include transportation, are subtotaled second to bottom, and then the total cost of attendance, that's the sum of the direct and indirect costs. That is 76,761.
Awesome, perfect. We are getting some questions that are not fully directly related to financial aid. So again, for any of those questions about health services or any other Gonzaga related questions you have, please reach out to your admission counselor or to the admission office. We would be happy to address those individually with you. But I think, again, we have finished all of our questions. But if you have any else, please remember to contact us, phone, email. You can also schedule virtual appointments with either an admission counselor or with a financial aid counselor, and we would be happy to address those. We did get some other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and address those because, again, we've got 8 minutes left. How can we see the meal plan that the 15,730 represents?
So the 15,730 represents both on-campus living and meal plans, and it's based on averages. If you go to our student accounts website, the specific costs of each of the meal plans and the options and sort of what they include are there, as well as the housing costs for the various dorms. If you want to talk through kind of the options of kind of where first year students live and what the pros and cons are each are, I think that would be a great question for an admissions counselor. And they would probably know a bit about the meal plans as well.
Yes. Is tuition and other fees locked in for 4 years?
Tuition and other fees are not locked in for 4 years, and which leads us to the next question, which is the expected tuition cost increase. Historically, tuition has increased between 3% and 5% each year. And what I would say, having worked here and having, been in a role that is really concerned with the cost of everything, I really appreciate the way Gonzaga is super thoughtful in how it goes about establishing tuition and fees. We take pride in our transparency. We let students know well in advance when, what the tuition increases might be and what the drivers are for tuition increases, but it is not locked in, and I would recommend you plan on 3% to 5% increase each year.
Awesome. Okay. That is officially it now. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. We are always here to be a resource for you. And please never hesitate to reach out. Again, huge shout out to Sarah and Kelly for answering a bunch of the questions through the Q&A, and shout out to my colleague Will for also answering those questions and monitoring our polls. We hope everyone has a wonderful evening. And we, again, as Sarah mentioned at the end, we really hope you choose to be a ZAG and be part of our community. Have a good night, everyone.